We'll now have two information items. The first one is the Environment and Sustainability Advisory Group update. Dr. Swift, would you like to introduce this one?
Thank you, Madam President and trustees, members of the community. This is just a great evening in the Ann Arbor Public Schools as we welcome so many members of our two environmental advisory groups and folks who work with them. And I know they're going to do proper introductions a little bit later, but would all of you engaged in that work, would you just stand? We want to honor you now before we get into this. Stand if you would. Yay, there they are. Beautiful. Thank you all for being here tonight. I know that it's June 19th and you have other things you could be busy doing. So thank you for taking time this evening to share with us. We are so proud, and trustees, I put it in your packet. We're so proud of our policy 8000, which is our policy passed in December of 2018 that really anchors our district commitment to environmental sustainability. In fact, we launched an entirely new series of policies, the 8000 series, to dedicate to our commitment to the environment, to sustainability, and to environmental education. We know that in Ann Arbor and in the Ann Arbor Public Schools, we've long been known for our excellent environmental education efforts. There are founding leaders in this community that are revered widely for their influence and for their leadership around our environmental efforts. I am so pleased for us to be joined by members of the advisory groups this evening. And trustees, we're going to do this in two sections. So this is just kind of the preview of the engagement. Trustees, you have two reports from our two advisory groups that I know you've been looking forward to. The first one is our Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee. And then the second one is our Freeman Environmental Education Center Advisory Committee. These committees are a little bit like first cousins. They're working generally in a similar area, but they have very specific focus points. And we are delighted that we do have one member who serves across the two groups, and that is Dan Ezekiel, who is I call him in scientific terms a cross-pollinator because he works, and he agreed in the beginning, and I really appreciate always his efforts. He agreed to be the connector across the two groups. I'm also pleased to share that we have Mr. Emil Lautzana, our Executive Director of Facilities and Operations and Trustees. You know that when we recruited Mr. Lautzana to join our team just over a year ago, we absolutely had our eye on his expertise around facilities and around sustainability and around care for the environment and for our planet. That was what we were looking for, and wow, did the universe give us a gift in Mr. Lautzana. He works alongside Ms. Jenna Bacalor, Executive Director of the Community Division, with that group that is dedicated to Freeman Environmental development, and that is around our environmental education. Ms. Bacalor has long been a leader in the community, and we're thrilled for her engagement also. So we want to thank all members of both advisory groups and for all of their work. Trustees, you're going to see a summary of the work that has occurred in just over a year. You will see that they have laid a strong foundation, and we've got a lot of work to do. And as someone said earlier in public commentary, talking about it and planning it is one thing. Getting busy with the work is certainly the next challenge. And so we're very excited for these groups to bring forward, trustees, their initial recommendations to the superintendent and to the Board of Education. Just a reminder that in our policy, we are anchored around 4 cornerstones. And trustees, I know that you're aware of these from the policy, but I just want to state them for folks in the audience who may not be as familiar. The 4 cornerstones are environmental and sustainability education. They are around student leadership, environmental responsibility with our buildings and our lands, and they're also around external partnerships. We're extremely gifted with many amazing partnerships. In just over a year, these teams have laid out a blueprint for the launching of our work, and there'll be much more work forthcoming. Many of these advisory members, trustees, are esteemed leaders in the community around these topics, and I just want to say again how much we appreciate their engagement to bring forward these recommendations to you this evening. So trustees, if it sounds all right with you, we will go back to back with both of these presentations, and Mr. Lautzana will start us off. Does that sound all right? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lautzana.
Thank you, Dr. Swift. Good evening, Board of Education. It has been a year since we've been meeting as the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. So the presentation will overview the purpose and the formation and the membership of the committee, and sort of our process, how we did our initial sort of brainstorming work, formed topic teams, case studies, and then went through a prioritization exercise to look at what are some of the short-term priorities that we can tackle next school year, and what are some of the mid to long-term priorities that we'll work on over an extended period of time, and then briefly discuss our next steps. So our advisory committees engage community members by collecting data, establishing goals and expectations, identifying exemplar case studies, and bringing forward recommendations to inform and advise the superintendent and the Board of Education. In those recommendations, we consider a number of things, being sure to support diverse aspirations of all students, promote equitable access for all students to the recommendations, honor cultural diversity, obviously abide by legal and regulatory requirements, and support health and safety of students, staff, community, and the environment. Our mission statement as an advisory committee, we will work with the Executive Director of Physical Properties, myself, to make recommendations to the Superintendent and the Board of Education to develop an AAPS Environmental Sustainability Plan, including considerations of all the impacts of the district's decisions over the short and long term. And so here you see our membership. We have some teachers, administrators, as well as a number of community members. This was an open sort of solicitation, and these were the folks that were selected for this based on trying to get as much representation across the district and at different levels within our buildings. So this was our process. Each one of these dates is a meeting. We met monthly with, in between our monthly meetings, there were committee topic team meetings. And you can see we started with selection of the membership and then some brainstorming, and then we got into this topic team, case study work, reporting those out, and then prioritizing our recommendations. And partway through this, the board adopted in December of 2018, Policy 8000, which Dr. Swift just mentioned, and that helped to further inform our prioritization. So this was probably the funnest meeting of them all. This was the first meeting, and this was where everybody got to just brainstorm. It was a free-for-all. And we ended up with over 50 different ideas on 10 plus large sticky notes, everything from native landscaping, solar power, educating our community, opportunities for volunteers, stormwater management, healthy air, better lighting, energy conservation, all of that got put up on these sheets, and then we organized those as best we could into categories or themes. And then we did a follow-up sort of informal survey to gauge people's interest and priority around what we should focus on from that brainstorming session. From that, we formed 5 topic teams that then did further work looking at case studies locally and around the country, building energy and water use, indoor environments, site and grounds, student, staff, and community engagement, and waste reduction. And these teams met again sort of in between our monthly meetings and then would report back their activities to the main group. And so these dots are where some of these case studies came from. And here's a list of those. And each one of these we talked to school district personnel that had been engaged in various initiatives in their school district. The topic team would do a small PowerPoint, report that back to us, and we would all learn more about energy conservation, composting, recycling, community engagement programs, et cetera, from colleagues around the country. And so, as I mentioned, the board policy kind of came conveniently right as we were about to move into this prioritization. So we adopted that as one of the filters when we were conducting the prioritization exercises. So we have 2 filters that we applied to all of these possible things that we could focus on as a district: environmental sustainability education, student leadership, how we manage buildings and grounds, and external partners were sort of filter 1. And then filter 2 that we applied, what's the impact? What are the impacts of these various activities on student achievement, on the environment, and on sort of money and time resources? How much money and time would be involved? And then for that effort, how much do we impact student achievement and how much do we impact sustainability? And so from this, we came up with these 11 items that we felt were the most important for the district to focus on. And the ones that are bolded were thought to be those that we should focus on short term. So I'll just quickly read through these. Implement a district-wide sustainable schools program. That would be something where there would be a competition or some way that schools could participate in a district level program around sustainability, using school campuses and grounds and buildings as a living learning laboratory with a curriculum integration component, similar to the conversation we had just earlier with the gardens and curriculum. Measure and reduce utility consumption, utilizing elementary schools as neighborhood centers of engagement around sustainability, enhancing and repairing the current recycling system, planting trees for shading, which the board has approved some of that already, establishing a building energy improvement plan for each building, establishing performance criteria for new construction and major renovations, managing environmental factors for their impacts on student health, wellness, and performance, enhancing our gardening program, and developing and adopting a board sustainability policy. And so from this, we have 3 short-term action items that we would like to engage in next year. Item number 1, you can't reduce what you can't measure, and so we need to benchmark our energy and water usage. And there are national tools like Portfolio Manager maintained by the Department of Energy. There are others. Use one of those tools to essentially understand which buildings, based on their age of construction and utility consumption, which ones are sort of using more energy than we'd like, which ones are more efficient, and that can help us hone our work from there in terms of conservation and reduction. Ann Arbor historically has been a leader in recycling as a community. We're one of the first, if not the first, curbside recycling locations in the entire country. We've had a very strong recycling program in our schools historically. It has not had a lot of attention in the last few years, and we want to rebuild that program into a streamlined operation that has all of the right equipment, all of the right educational tools, and all of the other enhancements that would make it a successful program. And we are hopeful, and we have applied for a grant that's going to help us with some of the equipment. Hasn't been awarded yet, but we're very hopeful that we'll be able through some, now it's the Eagle at the state of Michigan has some money for recycling. We're hoping that that's going to help us to do this, but we are committing, regardless of the grant, to launching an enhanced program. And then finally, the third action item that we want to undertake is to really document our current school-based initiatives. We know some of the things that are out there, but it's a big district. There's a lot of things going on. We want to understand what everybody's doing as we work towards developing these neighborhood centers and these living learning initiatives. We want to understand what's going on so we can help enhance that and not have a situation where we're launching things that haven't been sort of vetted through existing systems. So those are our short-term priorities. Mid to long-term priorities. Again, this will be the buckets of those topic teams here. So student, staff, and community engagement, developing a sustainable schools program that's sort of a district level engagement that elementary schools, middle schools, high schools can participate in, and then focusing on climate change and providing tools and resources for the school community around climate change as a mid to long-term consideration. Building and energy water use, development of a clean energy plan for the district, and establishing performance criteria, energy guidelines for new construction and major renovation. And then reducing waste. Once we fix the recycling system, many school districts around the country are engaging with composting, and we have some challenges here in Ann Arbor with doing that, but we have some of the building blocks in place, and we feel that once we get the recycling program where we would like it to be, then composting becomes a natural next step. On the indoor environment, understanding and taking advantage of how we manage our environmental factors to create optimal lighting, acoustic, and thermal environments to better our student health, wellness, and performance based on being in these optimized environmental conditions. Reducing some of the other considerations the committee felt were important, reducing chemical use, indoor air quality, study the impacts of Wi-Fi cellular radiation, and develop a formal green cleaning policy. On site and grounds, stormwater, conduct a stormwater impact assessment and install more rain gardens. And on sort of native landscapings and invasive species reduction, consider using a no-mow approach where we can, reduce our outdoor water usage, and reduce the use of salt for snow removal where possible. So I know that's a lot to think about. You have the report in front of you, and feel free to study that, and I'm available for any questions. But our next steps are really to continue with participation from students, teachers, and staff, and to develop a strategy to, and Jenna and I, Ms. Bacalor and I have been talking about how we can develop a more formalized strategy to engage key stakeholder organizations, external organizations, to be part of this work. So I thank you for your opportunity to bring this to you tonight, and I'm available for any questions, or if you want to do Ms. Bacalor and then questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lozano. Would you pause before we bring up Ms. Bacalor and introduce the members of your advisory group who are with you?
Yeah, we have a couple here.
Okay, great. Have them pop up, and so the trustees and I can
Well, it's
appreciate
Mr. Garcia.
them.
Oh, yeah.
In the mic. Yeah.
Mr. Garcia and Mr. Beeson, and I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. Andrea. I think that's the three that are here. Are there others?
Very good. Thank you.
We only got
Yay.
three. Yeah. I appreciate that. And these folks have put in a lot of time. I mean, these were a lot of meetings, Monday evenings for several hours, plus committee meetings, plus additional work. So we really do appreciate their support.